Hi, it's Tiffany Lorraine Galloway, certified high performance coach with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. This month, our theme is resilient truth, and we're going to talk about that when it comes to health and well being with Charlotte. Thank you for being here, Charlotte, all the way in South Africa. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Please tell us more about you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here. I was saying earlier that I love technology because it does allow us to connect all over the world. And yeah, one of the things I've really learned since being able to talk to people all over the world is how we are all the same. We all want the same things. We're all dealing with the same things. We're managing the same struggles. And I think wherever one is living in the world, we're human. And I think that is what's always fascinated me. I'm absolutely fascinated by people. I love people. I love working with people, and really am absolutely passionate about seeing mums build their resilience so that they can enjoy their lives and this season of busy, chaotic, but also so that they can build the resilience in their children, so that they can see their children grow. And it's a kind of intergenerational just a joy to be able to see the impact intergenerationally. So it's such a happy place to be.
It's a great legacy to leave a pattern of health and well-being in the next generation and the generations to come. And that's something I think we're more aware of in the world today than we ever have been before in recent years, of really wanting to live holistically in a lifestyle that we can maintain and enjoy our lives and support our families and be available to them, especially our children. How would you define resilience?
Yes. And I think even more so now that we have, so much busyness, so much, globalization has allowed us this kind of capacity to move and be in a hurry. And we've lost, as you say, that wholesome kind of organic living. And I think people are wanting to go back to that. But how do you do that in this busy space?
Exactly. With that as well, how do you think someone resiliently keeps living their truth, especially when it comes to their health and their well-being, especially in a world today that wants to tell you what your truth is or who you should be or what a good mom is?
I think the thing is to, first of all, I don't think a lot of people know what their truth is. I don't, a lot of people know what their truth is. I think people are living in this story of what the world tells them they should be, or, what they should look like, or how they should behave. And for me, it's really getting to the kind of essence of, who am I and what do I have to offer the world that's actually different to everybody else. And then not being swayed by our emotions, I think, is our biggest thing. One of the greatest things I teach is emotional self-regulation, because we are pulled by our emotions. And when we're in that state, when we're being drawn away from the thing that we know we want to do, because we're feeling threatened in some way, we're fearful of something, or we're panicking about something, that means that we're actually not thinking clearly. And so then it's very hard to stay consistent when you are in a state of emotional dysregulation. Really hard to actually do the things that you want to do, or that are going to keep you healthy, to keep you well, to keep your relationships well. I feel like well-being is not just that physical aspect. For me, it is, what are my relationships like? What is my mental well-being like? What's my emotional well-being like? Then my physical well-being obviously is also an element of it, but they're all so interconnected and we can't look at them in a vacuum. And so for me, it really is about, how do I self-regulate so that I can be consistent and choose how I behave rather than reacting and living life in this kind of chaotic reactive way.
I think that takes some awareness first, for sure. And when you're working with clients, I'm curious, how do you first get them to gain clarity on their truth so they know, one, how to be honest with themselves about where they could improve and really find the truth of where they're at, but also the truth of where they want to go?
So the first step I take clients through is this creating of a vision. I often find that people will come to me with a problem, or they'll come with a situation that they don't want to be in. But, as moms, again, we're very rarely thinking about what we want. And so I help them actually to what's not working here and what is working and what do you really want. And we look at what would it be like if I were to give myself an A grade for the way that I live my life. What would that
Mm.
look like? How would I feel? How would I show up? How would I engage with my work? How would I engage with my children? And so really getting an idea about, if coaching is that journey from here, point A to point B, what is point B?
Yeah.
And also look at, there's obviously a longing in me for something. So, we will look at, okay, who is that little person inside who's underneath all the stories and all the stuff, all the experiences that we've had? Who is that little girl who was free to just be who she was before she heard all these things about what she should be? And so we have this wonderful opportunity to develop that vision of what it would look like and what it would feel like to be living, as you say, in our truth.
So children come into the world completely a genius, completely their truth. They don't hold back. They say what they feel because they're learning it and they're curious and they haven't judged it or stepped aside from it and seen that they're different. They somehow just are wholly themselves until the outside voices start coming in. So, how do we honor our children's truth on their journey, especially recognizing that their path is going to be different than ours and that we may not always know what direction they're going to choose to go?
I would say, first of all, it's really important to look at, are we, as you say, are we putting our direction, our path onto them, or are we recognizing from the very beginning that they are a person, a whole person with
Mhm.
ideas and opinions and thoughts? And, my children are now 6 and 4, and they fascinate me. And part of the work, though, for me has been coming to a confidence and a security and a certainty in who I am, so that I'm not actually having to live through my children. I'm not having to, they are not my success. They are not me proving myself to the world. And so, in knowing who I am and being certain in who I am, which has taken work, and, I've had to go through my own process, but I now have the capacity to really be interested in them and to recognize the things that are different about them. I mean, they're one's a boy, one's a girl. They You could say that that's the reason they're so different, but I mean, they are poles apart in so many aspects. And I think that the excitement of watching our children and seeing these unique individuals come into being, or not come, be there, and then just supporting them as they grow rather than imparting ourselves or imposing ourselves on them as they grow, is huge. I think that is, if we can do that, we're doing a good job.
So it sounds like all mothers have some universal truths around the world. We all want what's best for our children, and some keys to that are communication, and also just creating boundaries around our children, but allowing them their agency.
Absolutely. And I think it's not about giving them free reign. It's exactly that, creating boundaries. And I think that a lot of mums don't, we've got all this information and all of these new concepts around, letting our children feel what they're feeling and express it. And yet they also need boundaries. Boundaries allow children to feel safe. Boundaries allow other people to feel safe with us. My husband knows what my boundaries are. He feels much safer than if I didn't set my boundaries and just exploded. And, for our children to know that we are a place that they can absolutely be 100% themselves, but they also know that we're keeping them safe, I think is huge. We cannot just let them run free, but also recognizing that they are different to us, and they're going to experience the world in a completely different way to the way that we do.
I love the word you brought up, safety, because part of my 5-step process for a resilient mindset is first to realize you can create your own safety in whatever situation you find yourself in. And this is something I didn't figure out till I was older, due to parents who kind of live in fear and pass that negativity on the view of the world to me. And I never felt safe. And when I did some of that inner work, going back to a child, that was one of the first things that came up: is the world is unsafe, was this thought that I had. And it surprised me, but that pattern was evident once I discovered that throughout my life. And the idea that part of being resilient is realizing that you're still in control, that you always have a choice. There's always an option. It's a matter of being open, like children still are, to the curiosity of solving that problem instead of shutting down or feeling like fear is fatal. I think those are two thoughts that don't serve us, as somehow we're not safe, or the world is not safe, or anything that limits us from believing the truth, which is anything is possible. The only limitations we have are the ones that we put on ourselves. How do we teach our children that kind of resilience and to live that kind of truth?
Well, I think, as you said, what I believe is that the only person that we actually have control over is ourselves, or the only thing that we have control over is ourselves. So how do we, in a space that isn't safe, feel safe, or feel something that allows us to feel more in control? And if my children are, or somebody's children are experiencing something that is difficult for them, that is a challenge, by emotionally self-regulating myself, I can support my child in learning how to regulate himself. And I say specifically himself because my son has been my greatest teacher in resilience. From the age of, he was interestingly very passive until the age of about 18 months. And then he started having these monumental tantrums, 45-minute tantrums, lying on the floor, absolutely just unable to regulate in any way. And I noticed myself, when they started, I was unable to regulate. I was getting so frustrated. I mean, who has time to sit on the floor for 45 minutes waiting for him to get through this? I did a lot of research into it, and I was going through my own coaching journey at the time, and I really taught myself how to self-regulate so that I could support him in learning that. So part of it is that capacity. It's hard, kind of accepting his feelings, accepting my feelings. This is really hard for us both right now, and we're both struggling, but we're in it together. And your feelings are accepted, and I'm accepting my feelings. I'm not trying to push them away, but I am trying to feel differently. So giving us both that space to do that, and then using the techniques that I have learned in my own journey to regulate myself so that I could support him in doing that.
It's
And
such a
here,
beautiful example of how our children force us to grow in ways we wouldn't otherwise grow. I find motherhood is very fulfilling, but also there's a lot to it, and it definitely has stretched me in ways and capacities I never would have done on my own. As you were talking about that story, I was thinking about one of my siblings would get so angry they'd hold their breath and turn red until they passed out. My poor mother had to find a way to cope with that. So there's always different versions of this out there, and that's universal. Children struggle to regulate their emotions. And that seems to spike something in us. I think that's especially true if you grew up in a chaotic, dysfunctional household. You may not understand why something triggered you. And then you have to go back and go, why am I dysregulated here? I think that really is a key of staying in control as a parent, but also having the power to realize you can pause, you can reset, and you can create a new pattern, and you can show up the way that you want to, and you can give yourself some grace, especially if you have very ingrained patterns that you're looking at changing, or you're a chain breaker in your family and you want to create something new. With that thought, I'm curious, when you have a client or even a child that has a fixed mindset, how do you get them back into a growth mindset? Where are some of your techniques to bring them back to the truth of possibility and that they have control to create the life that they want?
yeah, I mean, it's always interesting, and someone with a fixed mindset can always be quite a nice challenge because they are determined that this is the way it is, and I'm right, you're wrong, or this is just the way it is, and this is how it's going to be forever. And I think that my mission, especially for working mums who are juggling this work home life and feeling this chaos, is to say, first of all, that it doesn't have to be this way.
Mm.
It really doesn't have to be this way, and there is a different way. And often I'll be working with a client and she'll have something, everything, she's got to come back for it. And one of the greatest ways is for them to experience it. So taking them through a process of shifting out of that chaotic, frazzled state into a state of calm, a state of, kind of being able to think clearly, of being able to make decisions. And just that experience of moving from one emotional state to another emotional state, she starts to see, oh, actually, maybe there is something here that I hadn't considered, or something that could be useful for me. And so, that just gives space and creates space for more conversation to happen, and for there to be that kind of shift, if you will.
And that's where I think our children are such an example, because they're always in that state. And I don't know when it is that we shift out of that, but we're always discovering possibility, imagination. And they did a study on kids that, and I may have mentioned it in the podcast here before, but I saw this article about them studying who are geniuses and what children turn into geniuses or whatnot. And it turns out all children start out as geniuses. The problem was when the other things came in, when they went to a structured school setting or how they were being raised, that it just started dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. Eventually, they got frustrated with the study. Because the truth is, if we can find the right way to honor each child's truth, they can be the genius they were always meant to be, that they can always tap into their creativity and what they were meant to do. And so I think another key part of it, when I have a client or in my students, is really paying attention to what lights them up, what sparks that light in their eyes. What is the thing that it's like, you've said all these other things, but that is the thing that gets my attention, from your body language, from the tone that you had, from the way you're saying it. That's what's really true for you. How do you help clients with that? And how do we honor that in our children?
Well, again, I think that is an experience. So I would ask a client, often mums will come in, or women will come in, and they're exhausted. And they just say, I'm so exhausted. I have no energy. I can't face another day. And we'll spend some time thinking about the situations, that do energize them. What if you had a choice to do one thing on a Saturday morning that would leave you feeling like you could take over the world? What would that one thing be? And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, because also mums have often got to the point where they've forgotten about the things that they did that energized them and that they love to do and that they found when. So we might take a little bit of time to think about that and to kind of, dig back in the recesses of our minds. But again, then go. My whole premise is to get out of our heads and get back into our bodies. What does that feel like in your body? We spend so much time in this noise and this chaos in our heads. I want people to get back into their body so that they know, when I'm energized, the energy feels like this. When I'm depleted, when I'm feeling a depleting emotion like anxiety, this is what it feels like. And then they can start to notice, ooh, I'm feeling this heavy, dark, moving emotion. How do I get back to that beautiful yellow, bouncy, fluffy, whatever? They get to really know what that emotion that energizes them feels like. And then they can induce it. We do resilience techniques that will help them to induce that feeling in an instant. So when they are feeling something that is taking over and is causing them to behave in a way that they don't want to, or is making them feel depleted, they can shift into that bright, sunshiny, renewing emotional state.
And that shift can be quick. You can train yourself to have a positive trigger instead of a negative trigger. And I think the key to what you're saying too is if we can do that for our children in their childhood, how powerful will that individual be going into adulthood if they can honor and keep that instead of lose it and have to come back to it, like most of us often do. It's just part of the cycle, I think, is to find our truth, lose our truth, and come back to it. But if we use the right techniques and the right strategies as parents, we can really set our kids up for success. And I think as you were talking about that, what I was thinking about is, am I honoring when my child tells me they feel a certain way so that they can acknowledge this is what they're feeling? If I dishonor what they're feeling, teenager, toddler, or whatever, that doesn't let them stay with the emotion, recognize it, or then know the opposite. And I grew up in a household where negative feelings were a big no-no. Don't cry, don't talk back, no voice, right? So then I go out into the real world and experience hardship for the first times, and it was catastrophically devastating because I had never built any resilience. I was really good at putting on a show that everything was okay and that I was great when I was not. And so I think that starts when we're young. Let's be very intentional about how we honor emotions and build this emotional regulation that you're talking about, because they need that resilience. They need to know the bad to know the good. They need to know sad to know happy. You can't take that out of the equation. Real knowledge is knowing the opposite so that you can know how to go from one to the other. But if you don't know the one, you don't appreciate the other. And if you haven't experienced the one, you don't know how to manage it. And someday you're going to have the whole spectrum of emotions. We can't shield our children from any of that. And the thing too is there's nothing that our children are going to face or experience that somebody else hasn't faced. That also means there's a way through it. And so this fear that we're going to fail our children or we're going to ruin them, no, just set them up with the right tools and they will make the right choices for themselves. And two, children have agency. Individuals have agency. They're a person. So whatever your child chooses to do, if you're intentional, if you care, if you make the effort, you know you did your best. And the rest really is up to them. And I think that's the other thing that's hard to handle as a parent is letting go and letting them become the individual that we're meant to let them grow into. And that's the truth of our relationship. They're a part of us, but they're not. They're an individual.
And I think that there's almost that letting go aspect of it is double-sided, letting go of what we were told and what, that mad, you're talking about the different emotions. I mean, there are apparently 34,000 emotional states we could be in, but we know mad, sad, and glad. And we're told, you're angry or you're mad, and oh, you're sad, and oh, you're happy. And actually giving them the vocabulary, but that comes with learning the vocabulary ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have the vocabulary for our own feelings, or if we've been pushing our own feelings away because we were told that negative emotions were a no-no, how can we possibly allow our children to feel what they're feeling if we have no idea what they're feeling or what we're feeling? And so, getting to know our own emotional landscape. What is it that I'm actually feeling? One of my values is curiosity. I think I love to get inside my brain. What is going on in there? Get inside my body. What am I feeling? And what do I need to let go of in order to feel something different? Because generally I'm holding on to an idea or a story or a concept or an experience that is making me feel this discomfort, this uncomfortable feeling that then makes me behave in a way that I don't want to behave. And if
Yeah,
it impacts my
that's so key, is not taking it personally, not taking your
Mm,
emotion on as your identity. I feel bad, therefore I am bad. I think that's a huge shift that I've learned with some of the emotional regulation too. If there's a traumatic situation, you're going to have a traumatic response. If something makes me angry, I'm allowed to be angry. But then from there, I have to step back and choose, okay, this is the response. Now, what do I want to do about it?
yes. And that, I mean, I think, isn't that the key in what we're teaching our children, is that you can feel something and yet there's a socially acceptable way to behave. So throwing your food across the room is not an acceptable behavior in response to what you're feeling, and yet what you're feeling is accepted.
Yeah.
And so that's where, okay, so now you're feeling it, we accept it, it's completely natural, there's nothing wrong with you. The
Yeah.
behavior is not what we can accept. And so what do we need to feel in order to be able to go out into the world and behave in the way that we want to? And
Yes,
I
and
think
that's the
that is,
key for acknowledging good behavior too, is
mm,
acknowledge the behavior. Don't generalize, "Oh, you're a good boy. Oh, you're a good
yeah,
girl." Give specifics about what they did or what they're feeling so that they can really acknowledge that whole vocabulary and gain understanding. And I think children understand so much more than we give them credit for and are so intuitive and feed off of our emotions that we keep coming back. Are you well? Are you healthy? Because you're setting that pattern and that example, whether you mean to or not. When you think they're not looking, they're looking. When you think they're not listening, they're listening. And it'll surprise you when that comes out later.
absolutely. And I think that is the one of the issues for us as mums, is this good girl. I mean, it is something that has come up time and time and time again, is this need to be good. And you know how do we, again, it's that whole reparenting ourselves, noticing, I'm trying to be the good girl, I'm trying to do everything right, I want to do this all right, I want to be successful here, or I should be. And in doing that, we're actually doing the thing that we don't want to be doing, or we're not getting what we do want. And I think that is the kind of, for me, the idea that in the way that we're trying to get something, we're getting the opposite of it. But how could we do it so that we actually get the thing that we want?
And I think that circles back to the beginning of, you have to know your truth. You have to know what lights you up and what throws it off, and be able to say, that's not for me. That's not going to work. That might work for you. I honor your truth. I honor your opinion, and that's great, but I know what works for me. And I think there's the greatest power in life, is to be able to express that, to honor that, and to feel it and know it yourself. This feels off, and trusting your intuition and your gut. And then when something comes by you that's hard, being able to come right back to it. And I think something you mentioned earlier is so key, because we're talking about all these things you can do after the fact, but really you have the power to prepare for a lot of things. You can prepare healthy snacks, for example. You can prepare to set yourself up for success with a healthy routine for exercise. You can prepare for a hard situation that's coming up. Yes, sometimes life throws us curveballs. But if we're practicing that preparation and the idea of, okay, somewhere along the way, there's going to be a hardship with this goal or this journey or with this child, and we've already prepared in our mind how we're going to deal with it, we're able so much better to be in control and honor our truth and their truth. I think that's why they often say, if you're going to do something new, prepare the child. Or we just did a big move, for example, here, new background people. Yes, the move finally happened. But, it was interesting watching my son. I observe my kids as much as I can as a single parent. And he started watching episodes of some of his favorite shows that involved moving over and over and over again. And I was glad to see that he was finding his own way of what is moving? What is that? What does that mean? What are we doing? Oh, we're selling our house, like all of those things. And so it wasn't so hard with the move, and it wasn't just shut and shift. We had been prepared for the shift, and we had been prepared for the change. And it did take communicating really well of, this is the last time we're going to see our house. Enjoy the backyard while you can. We're not taking the trampoline with us, but we're going to have these other fun things where we're going. We're going to have these other opportunities where we're going. And it just helped everything transition so much easier. And I don't know that I knew that as well with my first kids, my older kids. And it's funny what you know and you don't know, and you get better at as there's more kids or as you get older and you have more experience. But it's so interesting to me that so much of it comes down to honest communication with ourselves, and then really good, effective, resilient communication with them.
Yes. And it is that preparation. It's that, and also that coming back after the fact. So if you do make a mistake, just getting ourselves ready for what might knock us off course. I like to think of it as riding a surfboard. Like, I need to prepare myself to be able to get up onto the surfboard and then be able to ride the waves, whatever comes at me. And in order to do that, I've got to be strong enough to do that. So how I help people to do that is, I like to think of myself as a personal trainer for the mind. In a way, I used to be a personal trainer, so I've done the body, and I'm now in the mind. And I am about to launch on the 1st of September a group coaching program called Resilient, a group coaching program for working mums, helping them do exactly that, build the muscles that will allow them to ride the waves, will allow them to remain calm, will allow them to have a peaceful, easy life, to be confident, to be successful. And I don't believe that we can build resilient children without being resilient ourselves. So yes, this intergenerational building of these muscles, from mum down to their children, to their partners, to their workplaces, the impact can be huge.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for being here today. Guests, thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about resilience, reach out to Charlotte. I'm happy to help and teach you more about that 5-step resilient mindset trick that I have. It's pretty quick and easy. If you're interested in that, feel free to contact us. Our information will be here somewhere in a link, and you can reach out to us if you want to continue this conversation. And thank you. We believe in you. Believe in yourselves. God bless. And we'll see you next time on the Resilient Mother Podcast.